when the galaxy's elite asked for Earth's Help Commander Sarah Chun was reviewing maintenance reports in her quarters aboard the ESS Titanfall when the communication console erupted with an incoming priority signal. The frequency was one she had never seen before, encrypted with patterns that seemed almost impossible to decode. Her fingers moved across the console with practiced efficiency, but the signal remained stubbornly locked behind layers of alien technology. Bridge to Commander Chun came the voice of Lieutenant Jake Morrison over the intercom. We're receiving a transmission on frequencies that aren't in our database. The signal is coming from outside our solar system, and it's marked as maximum priority. Sarah straightened in her chair. In the 15 years since humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel, they had made contact with dozens of alien civilizations. Most had been friendly, though distant. Some had been openly hostile, but none had ever sent a signal quite like this one. "Route it to my quarters, Lieutenant. I'll handle the decryption myself." The next few minutes were spent in intense concentration as Sarah worked through the alien encryption. Her training at the Earth Defense Academy had included extensive study of xenolinguistics, but this was beyond anything she had encountered. The patterns were too complex, too sophisticated for any known species in humanity's database. Finally, after nearly an hour of work, the signal began to clear. What emerged made Sarah's blood run cold. "This is Prime Chancellor Velox of the Galactic Union High Command," came a voice that carried the weight of absolute authority. "We are transmitting on emergency frequencies to all known civilizations. The Union faces an unprecedented threat that has already destroyed 17 of our finest fleet groups. We require immediate assistance from all available military forces." Sarah paused the message and leaned back in her chair. The Galactic Union was the most powerful alliance in known space, composed of 12 advanced civilizations that had achieved technological superiority beyond anything humanity could imagine. Their ships were legends, their weapons capable of destroying entire star systems. For them to be calling for help was almost unthinkable. She resumed the playback, and the Chancellor's voice continued with what sounded like barely controlled desperation. "The enemy we face is unlike anything in our databases. They consume our technology, turning our own weapons against us. Our energy shields are useless. Our plasma cannons feed their strength. We have lost over 300 vessels and approximately 2 million personnel in the past 7 solar cycles." The message paused, and Sarah could hear the sound of explosions in the background. When the Chancellor spoke again, his voice carried a note of something she had never heard from a Union official before: humility. "We are therefore requesting assistance from all available forces, including those civilizations we have previously deemed unsuitable for Union membership. Coordinates for the conflict zone are attached. Any vessel capable of faster-than-light travel is asked to respond immediately." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah staring at the console in shock. The Galactic Union had spent decades refusing humanity's requests for membership, citing their primitive technology and aggressive nature. They had called humans Deathworlders as an insult, suggesting that their harsh homeworld had made them too violent for civilized galactic society. Now those same beings were asking for help from the species they had rejected. Sarah activated the ship's communication system and called for an immediate meeting of all senior officers. Within minutes, her command staff had assembled in the briefing room, their faces showing the same mixture of surprise and determination that Sarah felt. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "we have just received a distress call from the Galactic Union. They are facing an enemy that has destroyed hundreds of their ships and killed millions of their people. They are requesting assistance from all available forces, including Earth." Lieutenant Morrison, the ship's tactical officer, was the first to speak. "Commander, the Union has never acknowledged our military capability. They've always treated us like we're barely capable of space travel." "That's correct, Lieutenant, but desperate times change perspectives. The question is, what do we do about it?" Chief Engineer Elena Vasquez leaned forward in her chair. "Ma'am, our ship is one of the newest in the Earth Defense Fleet, but compared to Union technology, we're still using primitive systems. Our weapons are chemical-based rockets and kinetic projectiles. Their ships use energy weapons that can level mountains. Sarah nodded. True, but we have something they don't. What's that, Commander? Asked Dr. Michael Torres, the ship's medical officer. We know how to fight dirty. The room fell silent as the implications of Sarah's word sank in. Earth's military doctrine had been developed through centuries of warfare against other humans who were equally intelligent and resourceful. Every tactic, every strategy had been tested against opponents who could think, adapt, and counterattack with deadly efficiency. The Union species, for all their technological superiority, had enjoyed peace for over 1,000 years. They had forgotten what it meant to face an enemy who wanted to destroy them completely. Commander, said Major Lisa Park, the ship's Marine commander, if we're going to do this, we need to understand what we're up against. The Union's distress call mentioned that the enemy consumes technology. That suggests they're not using conventional weapons or tactics. Sarah activated the main display and showed the star charts that had been included with the Union's message. The conflict zone is in the Kepler 442 system, approximately 47 light-years from Earth. According to Union intelligence, the enemy appeared without warning 3 weeks ago and has been systematically destroying everything in their path. Any information about the enemy's appearance or origin? Asked Lieutenant Morrison. Nothing concrete. Union survivors describe them as entities of pure energy that can somehow absorb and redirect technological attacks. Their ships, if they can be called ships, appear to be made of some kind of living energy that shifts and changes constantly. Dr. Torres frowned. That doesn't sound like any known form of life. Energy-based entities would need some kind of containment system to maintain cohesion in space. Unless, said Chief Vasquez thoughtfully, they're not from our dimension. There are theoretical models for beings that exist in higher energy states, but they would be incredibly difficult to interact with using conventional technology. Sarah looked around the room at her officers. Each one was a veteran of Earth's conflicts, trained in the harsh realities of warfare that the Union species had forgotten. They understood that sometimes the only way to defeat an enemy was to think like them. Here's what we're going to do, Sarah announced. We're going to answer their call for help, but we're going to do it our way, using our methods and our technology. The Union thinks we're primitive, but maybe that's exactly what they need. The next several hours were spent in intense preparation. The ESS Titanfall was one of Earth's most advanced vessels, equipped with the latest in human military technology. Her weapons systems included nuclear-tipped missiles, electromagnetic railguns, and close-range plasma cannons that had been reverse-engineered from captured alien technology. More importantly, the ship carried a crew of 300 humans who had been selected for their ability to think creatively under pressure. Each had been trained in multiple disciplines and cross-trained in combat techniques that emphasized adaptability over rigid doctrine. As the ship prepared for departure, Sarah received a communication from Earth Defense Command. Admiral Robert Hayes appeared on her screen, his weathered face showing the strain of commanding humanity's defense forces. Commander Chen, I've reviewed the Union's distress call. This is an unprecedented opportunity for humanity to prove itself on the galactic stage. But I want you to understand the risks involved. I understand, Admiral, but this is also a chance to help people who are in desperate need, regardless of how they've treated us in the past. Hayes smiled grimly. That's exactly the kind of thinking that makes humans different from other species. The Union sees warfare as a technological problem to be solved with superior firepower. We see it as a human problem that requires human solutions. Our mission parameters, sir? Simple. Respond to the distress call, assess the situation, and do whatever is necessary to help Union forces survive. But remember, Commander, you're not just representing Earth. You're representing the idea that sometimes the best technology is the one that comes from the heart. The ESS Titanfall departed Earth's orbital shipyards 12 hours later, her engines pushing her toward the edge of human space at maximum velocity. As they approached the jump point that would take them to the Kepler 442 system, Sarah gathered her senior staff for one final briefing. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to enter a conflict zone where the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy have been defeated by an enemy they don't understand. We're going in with equipment they consider primitive and tactics they consider barbaric. But we have one advantage that no amount of technology can replicate. "What's that, Commander?" asked Lieutenant Morrison. "We're human. We come from a world that spent millions of years trying to kill us, and we survived by learning to adapt, to fight, and to never give up. The Union species evolved on peaceful worlds where cooperation was the key to survival. They've forgotten what it means to face an enemy who wants to destroy everything they hold dear." Sarah looked around the room at the faces of her officers. Each one showed the same determination that had carried humanity through every crisis in their history. The Union called us Deathworlders as an insult. Today, we're going to show them that being forged in the fires of a harsh world isn't a weakness. It's exactly what the galaxy needs when civilization itself is under threat. The ESS Titanfall engaged her faster-than-light drive and vanished into the void, carrying with her the hopes of an entire species and the determination to prove that sometimes the most primitive solutions are the most effective ones. As the ship traveled through hyperspace toward the conflict zone, Sarah stood on the bridge watching the stars streak past. In a few hours, they would arrive at a battle that would determine not just the fate of the Union, but humanity's place in the galaxy. The Deathworlders were coming to war, and the galaxy would never be the same again. What happens when Deathworlders enter the battle the ESS Titanfall dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and what greeted them was a scene of devastation that none of the human crew had expected to witness. Floating in the void were the remains of what had once been the most powerful fleet in galactic history. Union vessels, each one a masterpiece of advanced engineering, drifted like broken toys among clouds of debris that sparkled with the remnants of exotic metals and crystalline technologies. Commander Sarah Chun stood on the bridge, watching through the main viewport as her ship moved slowly through the graveyard of galactic civilization. The scale of destruction was overwhelming. Ships that could have easily destroyed Earth's entire defense fleet had been torn apart by forces that defied conventional understanding. "Sensor report," she ordered, her voice steady despite the horror of what they were seeing. Lieutenant Morrison worked his station, his face pale, as the readings came through. "Commander, I'm detecting 17 major debris fields, each one representing what appears to be an entire Union battle group. Based on the size of the wreckage, we're looking at the remains of over 400 vessels." Chief Engineer Vasquez moved to her own console and began analyzing the energy signatures left behind by the destruction. "Ma'am, the damage patterns are unlike anything I've ever seen. It looks like the ships were literally dissolved from the inside out. Their hull materials have been broken down at the molecular level." Dr. Torres joined the analysis from his position at the science station. "Commander, I'm reading trace amounts of exotic particles that don't match any known weapon signatures. Whatever did this wasn't using conventional energy weapons or kinetic projectiles." Sarah absorbed this information while studying the tactical display. The destruction was so complete that it was difficult to imagine what kind of force could have caused it. But her training had taught her to look beyond the obvious and search for patterns that others might miss. Lieutenant Morrison scanned for any active Union vessels in the system. If anyone survived this, they're going to need immediate assistance. For several tense minutes, the bridge crew worked in silence as their sensors swept through the debris fields. Finally, Morrison looked up with the first good news they had received since arriving. "Commander, I'm detecting 3 vessels with active life support systems. 2 appear to be damaged but operational, and 1 is completely disabled but still has power to life support. Set course for the nearest vessel. We're going to find out what happened here." As the Titanfall approached the first Union ship, Sarah was struck by how different it looked from human vessels. Where Earth's military ships were built like armored fortresses designed to withstand massive damage, Union vessels were elegant works of art that seemed to flow like liquid metal through space. Unfortunately, that elegance had not saved them from whatever force had devastated this fleet. The Union ship was identified as the CSS Luminous Dawn, a heavy cruiser that had been one of the most advanced vessels in their fleet. Now, it hung dead in space, its beautiful hull scarred with marks that looked like they had been made by some kind of corrosive acid. "Hail them," Sarah ordered. The response came immediately, and the voice that answered was filled with a mixture of relief and desperation that Sarah had never heard from a Union officer before. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain Thylex of the Luminous Dawn. We have been adrift for 6 solar cycles with minimal power and failing life support. Please identify yourself and state your intentions." Sarah activated the visual communication system, knowing that her appearance would likely shock the Union captain. Humans were known throughout the galaxy, but they were rarely taken seriously by the advanced civilizations. "Captain Thylex, this is Commander Sarah Chun of the Earth vessel ESS Titanfall. We received your distress call and have come to provide assistance." The alien that appeared on their screen was tall and graceful, with blue-tinted skin and large eyes that showed intelligence and refinement. Captain Thylex stared at Sarah for a moment before speaking, and when he did, his voice carried a note of disbelief. "Commander Chin, did you say Earth vessel?" The Union's message was sent to all civilizations, but we did not expect, that is, we were not aware that your species possessed vessels capable of faster-than-light travel to this distance. Sarah smiled grimly. "Captain, we have a lot of capabilities that the Union hasn't bothered to learn about. Right now, our priority is getting you and your crew to safety. What can you tell us about the enemy that did this?" Thylex's expression grew grim. "They appeared without warning 3 weeks ago. Entities of pure energy that seemed to exist in a state between matter and force. Our weapons were useless against them. Every energy blast we fired was absorbed and redirected back at us with increased power. They consumed our ships like some kind of technological plague. How many enemy vessels are we dealing with?" "That is the terrifying part, Commander. We never saw any ships. The entities themselves are the ships, if such a term can be applied. They move through space as if it were their natural environment, and they seem to feed on the energy that powers our technology." Sarah exchanged glances with her senior officers. This information changed everything about how they would need to approach the threat. "Captain Thylex, we're going to begin rescue operations immediately. How many survivors do you have aboard?" 43 out of a crew of 300, Thylex replied, his voice heavy with grief. "The entities, they didn't just destroy our ships. They seemed to drain the life force from anyone who came into direct contact with them." Over the next several hours, the human crew worked tirelessly to evacuate survivors from the 3 damaged Union vessels. The rescue operations revealed the full scope of the disaster that had befallen the galactic fleet. Out of 17 battle groups that had originally responded to the threat, fewer than 200 individuals had survived as the rescued Union personnel were brought aboard the Titanfall. Sarah was struck by how different they were from humans. These beings had evolved on worlds where conflict was rare and cooperation was the norm. They moved with grace and spoke with refined voices, but she could see in their eyes the shock of beings who had never experienced the reality of total warfare. Dr. Torres worked around the clock to treat the survivors, many of whom were suffering from what appeared to be energy-drain symptoms that human medicine had never encountered before. Chief Vasquez led teams of engineers in analyzing the Union technology, searching for clues about how the enemy had been able to so completely overwhelm such advanced systems. It was during one of these analysis sessions that the breakthrough came. "Commander," Vasquez called excitedly from the engineering bay, "I think I know why the Union weapons were so ineffective against these entities." Sarah hurried to the engineering section, where Vasquez was standing over a collection of Union weapon components that had been salvaged from the debris. "Their entire weapon system is based on pure energy manipulation," Vasquez explained. "Plasma cannons, particle beams, quantum disruptors, everything they use converts matter into energy and then directs that energy at targets. But if the enemy actually feeds on energy, then every shot the Union fired was actually making them stronger," Sarah finished. "What about our weapons?" "That's the beautiful part, Commander. Our weapons are primitive by Union standards. Kinetic projectiles, chemical explosives, nuclear reactions. We're still using matter-based weapons that release energy as a byproduct rather than converting matter into pure energy. Sarah felt a smile cross her face as she realized what this meant. So, while the Union was essentially feeding these entities with every shot they fired, our weapons might actually be able to damage them. Exactly. And there's something else. I've been analyzing the energy signatures from the attack sites, and I think these entities might have a weakness that the Union never discovered. Vasquez led Sarah to a computer terminal where she had been running simulations based on the energy patterns left behind by the enemy attacks. The entities seem to exist in a state of constant energy flux. They're absorbing energy from their environment to maintain their cohesion. But if they were suddenly exposed to a massive electromagnetic pulse, the kind that our nuclear weapons produce as a side effect, it might disrupt their energy matrix long enough for conventional weapons to damage them. Sarah studied the simulation results. It was a long shot, but it was the first viable strategy anyone had developed for fighting these entities. Chief, how long would it take you to modify our nuclear warheads to maximize their electromagnetic output? Give me 4 hours, Commander. I can reconfigure the detonation sequence to create an EMP burst that should temporarily disrupt any energy-based entity within a 50-kilometer radius. As Vasquez began her work, Sarah called a meeting of all department heads. The time for analysis was over. They were about to face an enemy that had destroyed the most advanced military force in the galaxy, and they were going to do it with weapons that the Union considered barely better than throwing rocks. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah began, we now understand what we're facing, and we have a strategy for fighting it. In approximately 6 hours, enemy entities are expected to arrive in this system based on their previous movement patterns. We're going to be here, waiting for them. Major Park leaned forward. Commander, what about the Union survivors? Shouldn't we evacuate them to safety before engaging the enemy? Negative, Major. The nearest safe system is 3 days away, and we don't have time to make that journey and return before the entities arrive. Besides, these people have been through hell. They deserve to see their enemy defeated. Lieutenant Morrison pulled up the tactical display. Ma'am, based on survivor testimony, we should expect between 20 and 30 individual entities. Each one is roughly the size of a Union heavy cruiser and capable of moving at near light speed. What's our battle plan? Asked Dr. Torres. Sarah activated the main display and showed the formation she had developed. We're going to use what the Union would call primitive tactics. First, we're going to hit them with a coordinated nuclear strike designed to disrupt their energy matrices. Then, while they're confused and weakened, we're going to close to point-blank range and hit them with everything we have. Chief Vasquez looked up from her engineering console. Commander, that's an incredibly risky strategy. We'll be exposing ourselves to direct attack from entities that can drain energy from anything they touch. Chief, risk is something humans understand better than any other species in the galaxy. We've been taking impossible risks and surviving them for our entire evolutionary history. Today, we're going to show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do when their backs are against the wall. The hours that followed were a blur of activity as the crew prepared for the most important battle in human history. Weapons were loaded, systems were checked and double-checked, and every member of the crew took time to send personal messages back to Earth in case they didn't survive the engagement. When the entities finally appeared at the edge of the system, they came exactly as the survivors had described, not ships in any conventional sense, but beings of pure energy that moved through space like living lightning. They were beautiful and terrible, pulsing with power that seemed to bend space itself around them. All hands, battle stations, Sarah announced over the ship's communication system. Today we fight not just for ourselves, but for every peaceful civilization in the galaxy. Show them what humans can do. The ESS Titanfall moved to intercept the entities, her engines pushing her toward a confrontation that would determine whether the galaxy's peaceful species would survive or be consumed by forces beyond their understanding. The Deathworlders were going to war, and the universe would never be the same How Earth became the galaxy's protector. The battle that followed would be remembered throughout galactic history as the moment when everything changed. The ESS Titanfall faced the energy entities with weapons that the Union considered primitive, but what the galaxy witnessed was the raw power of human determination and ingenuity. Commander Sarah Chen watched from the bridge as the entities approached in perfect formation, their energy signatures blazing across her tactical displays like miniature stars. Each one pulsed with power that could have vaporized the Union vessel with a single touch, yet Sarah felt no fear. Her crew was ready, and they had a plan that no other species would have considered. Range to target, she asked calmly. 50 kilometers and closing, Lieutenant Morrison reported. They're moving in perfect synchronization, just like the survivors described. All weapons armed and ready. Commander announced Major Park from the weapons console. Nuclear warheads configured for maximum electromagnetic pulse effect. Sarah took a deep breath and gave the order that would change the course of galactic history. Fire all weapons. The space around the Titanfall erupted in brilliant light as 12 nuclear warheads detonated simultaneously, each one calibrated to produce the most powerful electromagnetic pulse that human technology could generate. The effect on the energy entities was immediate and devastating, the perfect formation of energy being suddenly scattered as their cohesion was disrupted by the electromagnetic chaos. For the first time since the conflict began, the entities showed signs of vulnerability as their energy matrices flickered and destabilized. Direct hit. Morrison shouted. Their energy signatures are fluctuating wildly. Whatever you did, Chief Vasquez, it's working. Sarah didn't waste the opportunity. All ships close to attack range. Hit them with everything we have while they're disrupted. The Titanfall surged forward into the chaos of the electromagnetic storm, her kinetic weapons blazing as the crew poured fire into the confused entities. Railgun projectiles moving at a significant fraction of light speed tore through energy patterns that had seemed invulnerable just moments before. For the first time in weeks, the entities were taking damage. The beings of energy attempted to reform their attack formation, but the electromagnetic interference was still affecting their ability to coordinate. Individual entities began to lash out wildly, sending energy bursts in all directions as they tried to strike back at their attackers. Evasive maneuvers. Sarah ordered as a beam of pure energy passed close enough to their ship to overload several secondary systems. Don't give them a stationary target. The Titanfall twisted through space like a dancer, her human crew using instinctive reactions that had been honed by generations of aerial combat. Where Union ships moved with mathematical precision, the human vessel moved with the unpredictable grace of a species that had learned to survive by being impossible to pin down. Chief Vasquez worked frantically at her engineering station as she monitored the electromagnetic pulse effects. Commander, the interference is starting to fade. We have maybe 2 more minutes before they fully recover their coordination. Sarah made a decision that would have horrified Union military doctrine, but made perfect sense to a human commander. All hands, prepare for ramming speed. We're going to finish this the old-fashioned way. The bridge crew stared at her for a moment before understanding dawned on their faces. Major Park was the first to respond. Aye, Commander. Ramming speed it is. The Titanfall's engines roared to maximum power as the ship accelerated directly toward the largest concentration of entities. At the last possible second, Sarah ordered the release of their remaining nuclear warheads at point-blank range. The explosion that followed was visible from the outer edge of the star system. When the light faded, the energy entities were gone, their matrices disrupted beyond any possibility of recovery. The ESS Titanfall emerged from the blast damaged, but intact, her crew having accomplished what the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had failed to do. The silence that followed the battle was broken by incoming communications from across the galaxy. Word of the human victory had spread with impossible speed, and every major civilization was demanding to know how a single Earth vessel had defeated an enemy that had destroyed hundreds of Union ships. The first response came from Prime Chancellor Velox himself, his voice carrying a mixture of awe and disbelief that no human had ever heard from a Union leader. Commander Chun, This is Prime Chancellor Velox of the Galactic Union. We have been monitoring your engagement with the entities. Is it true that you have successfully destroyed them? Sarah looked around her damaged bridge at her exhausted crew. They had proven something that day that went far beyond military victory. They had shown the galaxy that sometimes the most advanced solution wasn't the best solution. Chancellor Velox, the immediate threat has been neutralized. All hostile entities in this system have been destroyed. We are now conducting rescue operations for Union survivors. There was a long pause before the Chancellor responded, and when he did, his words would echo through history. Commander, the Union owes your species a debt that can never be repaid. You have accomplished what our greatest minds and most advanced technologies could not. We have been wrong about humanity. Over the following days, as the Titanfall transported Union survivors to safety, Sarah received a constant stream of communications from across the galaxy. Species that had never acknowledged human existence were suddenly eager to establish diplomatic relations. Military leaders who had dismissed Earth's forces as primitive were requesting detailed tactical analyses of the battle. But the most significant communication came from Dr. Torres, who had been analyzing data recovered from the destroyed entities. Commander, you need to see this, Torres said as he entered her quarters carrying a datapad with readings that made Sarah's blood run cold. What is it, Doctor? The entities we destroyed were scouts. According to the energy patterns I've decoded from their remains, they were part of an advance force sent to evaluate galactic defenses. The main invasion force is still coming. Sarah studied the data with growing alarm. The numbers were staggering. How many ships are we talking about, Doctor? Not ships, Commander. Entities. Conservative estimates suggest we're facing an invasion force of over 10,000 energy beings, each one more powerful than the scouts we just defeated. The implications were overwhelming. Even with their newfound knowledge of how to fight the entities, no single ship could hope to face such numbers. The galaxy would need to unite as it never had before. 3 days later, Sarah found herself standing in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Union, addressing the combined leadership of every major civilization in known space. The hall was filled with beings of dozens of different species, all of whom were now looking to humanity for guidance in the face of an existential threat. Prime Chancellor Velox stood to introduce her, his words carrying a humility that would have been unthinkable just a week earlier. Honored delegates, I present Commander Sarah Chin of Earth, whose actions have proven that the Union's assessment of humanity was not only wrong, but dangerously misguided. She will now address us regarding the defense of our galaxy. Sarah stepped to the central podium and looked out at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. She saw species that had evolved on paradise worlds where conflict was unknown, beings of incredible intelligence who had never faced an enemy that wanted to destroy everything they held dear. Honored delegates, she began, the threat we face is beyond anything any of our civilizations has encountered before. The entities that attacked Union forces are not interested in conquest or negotiation. They exist only to consume and destroy. Facing them will require us to abandon our old ways of thinking and embrace new strategies. A delegate from the Altair Confederation raised a tentacle in question. Commander Chun, your tactics proved effective against the scout force, but how can we hope to face 10,000 such entities? Sarah had spent hours preparing for this question. The answer lies not in superior technology, but in diversity of approach. The Union's energy weapons fed the entity's power. Our primitive kinetic weapons could damage them, but no single approach will be sufficient against the main invasion force. She activated the holographic display in the center of the hall, showing a tactical analysis that her crew had developed during the journey to Union space. We need to combine the technological superiority of Union civilizations with the tactical flexibility that humanity has developed. Energy weapons modified to drain rather than feed. Kinetic bombardments coordinated with electromagnetic pulses. And most importantly, command structures that can adapt and improvise when plans inevitably fail. The hall buzzed with discussion as the delegates considered her words. Finally, Chancellor Velox spoke for the Assembly. Commander Chun, the Union formally requests that Earth take a leadership role in the galactic defense. We offer humanity full membership with voting rights, access to all our technologies, and senior positions in the combined fleet command structure. Sarah looked out at the faces of beings who had spent decades treating humanity as inferior. The irony was not lost on her that Earth's supposed primitiveness was now being hailed as exactly what the galaxy needed. Chancellor, humanity accepts the responsibility of helping to defend the galaxy, but we do so not as superior beings, but as partners in a cause that affects every peaceful civilization. The entities that are coming don't care about our differences or our past conflicts. They only care about consumption and destruction. Over the following months, Sarah found herself at the center of the largest military buildup in galactic history. Human tactical doctrines were integrated with Union technology to create weapons and strategies that neither species could have developed alone. Earth's shipyards worked around the clock to produce vessels that combined human durability with alien sophistication. The transformation was remarkable. Union engineers learned to build ships that could take damage and keep fighting. Human crews learned to operate weapon systems that could reshape matter at the quantum level. Together, they created a combined fleet that represented the best of both approaches to warfare. But perhaps the most significant change was in the attitude of the galactic community toward humanity. The term Deathworlder was no longer spoken as an insult, but with respect and even admiration. Other species began to understand that Earth's harsh environment had not made humans savage, but had taught them lessons about survival and determination that peaceful worlds could never provide. As the combined fleet prepared for the arrival of the main invasion force, Sarah stood once again on the bridge of the Titanfall, now designated as flagship of the Galactic Defense Fleet. Around her, hundreds of ships from dozens of species moved in formations that combined Union precision with human unpredictability. Lieutenant Morrison approached with the latest intelligence reports. Commander, long-range sensors are detecting gravitational anomalies at the edge of the galaxy. The main invasion force is estimated to arrive within 72 hours. Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility for every peaceful civilization in the galaxy. The battle that was coming would determine whether the galaxy's diverse species would survive to explore the stars or be consumed by entities that knew only hunger and destruction. Signal all ships, Lieutenant. All hands to battle stations. The real war is about to begin. As the combined fleet moved to intercept the incoming invasion, Sarah reflected on how much had changed since that first distress call from the Union. Humanity had gone from galactic outcasts to the leaders of civilization's defense, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through the simple willingness to fight for others, even when those others had never shown them respect. The Deathworlders were ready for war, and this time they would not be fighting alone. The galaxy had finally learned that sometimes the most important battles are won not by the most advanced weapons, but by the courage to stand up to impossible odds and never surrender. The invasion force appeared on their sensors like a plague of stars, 10,000 entities of pure energy moving toward the galaxy with the inexorable force of a natural disaster. But waiting to meet them was something the entities had never encountered before. A united galaxy led by a species that had learned on the harshest world imaginable that freedom was worth any sacrifice. The final battle for the galaxy was about to begin, and humanity would ensure that civilized species would have the chance to write their own futures among the stars.